If members of the appropriation, if you want to turn off your video until we're ready, you can, but that's up to you. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April Fool's Day edition of the Northborough Select Board. My name is Mitch Cohen, and I will call this meeting on April 1st, 2024 to order. The time is 7:02 p.m. and I will read some opening remarks. This open meeting of the Northborough Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. All members of the Northborough Select Board are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The Act allows the Northborough Select Board to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream or the recording of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. I will now go around the room for the members of the Select Board. Members of the Corporation will be bringing you in when that agenda item is up. Make sure people can hear and be heard in the order on my screen. Lisa Maselli.
Here.
Kristen Wickstead.
Here.
Laura Zeiton.
Here.
Julianne Hirsch.
Here.
And let's see, we have Town Administrator Tim McInerney.
I'm here.
And Assistant Town Administrator Diane Wackel.
Here.
Excellent. And we'll have Jason Little come in a little while and perhaps some other kind folks. And with that, let's get started. First item on our agenda. Now, this is a special meeting, so we usually don't have public comment, but public comment is on the agenda and we always appreciate it. So if there is a member of the public who wishes to offer any input or questions, whether it's related to our agenda or not, feel free to raise your electronic hand. And I will say that our main topic tonight is continuation of the public hearing on the budget, so that if you have budget related questions, probably better off to wait until then. So again, if you have any comments or questions, raise your electronic hand. I'll recognize you. Give it another moment. Going once, going twice. Public comment is closed. We have 3 sets of meeting minutes, thankfully, to review and consider for approval. First up is January 22nd. I will say on the 22nd and February 12th, there was a version distributed in the agenda packet. A couple of people had some comments on those, so updated copies were distributed around 4:30 this afternoon. So we'll be considering those that the board has seen, the roughly 4:30 p.m. versions of the January 22nd and February 12th. There were no amendments made to the February 26th. Is there a motion on the January 22nd meeting minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to approve the January 22nd, 2024 meeting minutes as amended.
Second.
Motion made by Kristen, seconded by Julianne to approve. Any other comments? All those in favor, Kristen?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Now I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Meeting minutes are approved. Next up, we have February 12th, 2024.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's your turn.
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to approve the February 12th, 2024 meeting minutes as amended.
Second.
Made by Laura, seconded by everybody. I'll give it to Kristen. Any comments or questions? All those in favor, Laura?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. We have those approved. And next up is February 26th, 2024.
Mr. Chairman, I move the board to vote to approve the February 26th, 2024 meeting minutes as
Presented.
yes.
You got that memo. Thank you.
Yes.
Second.
Motion made by Lisa, seconded by Julianne. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Lisa?
Yes.
Julianne?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Meeting minutes are approved. Thank you very much to everyone in the office who got us up to date with those. Next up is continued joint public hearing with the Appropriations Committee. So on behalf of the Select Board, I don't think we have to formally reopen. I don't have to read anything because I read that last time, but I will say the public hearing is open again on our budget. And I will ask the members of the Appropriation to come on in, and Scott Rogers as Chair of Appropriation, I suggest you may want to call your meeting to order and do your usual things.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to call to order the Appropriations Committee meeting of April 1st of the board, Select Board. Members, as I call your name, if you can just answer in the affirmative to know that you can hear and be heard. George Frankel.
Here.
Janice Height.
Here.
Tim Kaler.
Here.
Jeff Knight.
Here.
And that's who we have this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So when last we met, there was a version of the budget that was updated just before the meeting. So we thought it would be good to give not just Select Board Appropriations members, but of course the public an opportunity to read before we close the public hearing, to offer any input or thoughts. Before I ask for input, is there anything new either in the budget or related to the budget that you want to tell us about, either Tim or Jason?
I can tell you that obviously the Appropriations Committee and the Financial Planning Committee still working on articles, including the budget. So you know that. And I think Thursday is a meeting for the Appropriations Committee. There's no changes to the budget we presented last week. We have been updating the Munis accounting system. You all know what we use for a financial software accounting package. So Jason has been adding data and numbers into the line items that correspond with everybody's submittal. And I've been working on a budget message that'll encapsulate a summary of the 79 million in general fund dollars that we'll spend, and then the additional 6 million or so for enterprise funds. So you've still had a total of 86,767,000. Two other pieces of just information that I'm trying to get out to the public. I know I've talked about this in the past. A few website improvements with the town administrator's corner, where I envision there'll be a warrant, and then there will be information for every article, along with a short video clip that we started Friday shooting at local cable, just to give people baseline information on the articles instead of just walking in looking at 66 at town meeting. Town meeting warrant article 66 is a lot. It could be overwhelming. So there's two reasons for that approach. One is we want people to feel like they can call us ahead of time and ask questions. If they don't sit through these meetings, at least we can be there to answer questions ahead of the meeting. And then obviously to provide information on the 66. So and we broke them down so it's indexed, so you don't have to watch me or my staff talk for the whole duration. You can just watch whatever article that interests you. It's hopefully between 2 and 4 minutes long, and it'll be easily digestible for folks. So that's kind of the goal, is to provide information and get feedback. So those are the 4 or 5 things that we've been working on since last week. Nothing substantive towards the budget because it hasn't changed at all.
Okay. Jason, anything you want to tell us before we open it up?
Well, Tim just said what I was my input was gonna be. There was absolutely no changes to the budget that was presented last week and today.
Fantastic. Scott, on behalf of the Appropriations Committee, Lisa, I just saw your hand go up a second ago. Hold on 2 seconds. I just want to see if there's anything new you wanted to offer before we start talking about the budget.
No, nothing specifically. As Tim mentioned, we've got a few items still to review. A little bit more deliberation on some questions that were asked to different departments as backup in context for some of their requests, but we plan to get through those on Thursday night, and all is scheduled that we would take our final votes on the financial articles and be able to finalize our committee report all in time for town.
Fantastic. Thanks, Scott. And Lisa, you've got your hand up. It's on your mind.
Two different things. And back to what Tim was saying, we asked, I think last week, about maybe getting a mock-up town meeting at the senior center. And I was checking to see what happened with that. Because we haven't got a lot of time left, so we're gonna have to give Kendra some time. Do you know where that is right now?
Could I, not to interrupt, but could I make a suggestion that maybe we cover that under the next agenda item, advertising strategies for town meeting? I think that might be a good spot for that.
Okay,
Just
all
a,
right.
just a thought.
Well, just following up on what Tim had talked about with the videos. Okay, hang on, I got a reading issue, so I have to be able to read what I wrote. All right, and then I guess if you want to talk about that meeting, then I can wait for those questions. But then I had one for the Appropriations Committee that I sent. I was hoping to do it sooner than this, but I sent it out late today. And I presented it to Tim, Scott Charpentier, and Scott Rogers. Tim, should I just read what I wrote?
Yeah, I would, and then if we can ask the chair to let Scott in, because there's some detail there that he would only know.
Okay, all
All
right.
right, I'll bring Scott Charpentier in advance of that. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Mr. Chairman.
Now you're making my life hard by having two Scotts on the meeting, but we'll deal. All right, Lisa, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just gonna read what I wrote so it's easier to remember everything. I wanted to ask this question to the Appropriations Committee after attending the February 22nd, 2024 meeting. And seeing that we are having a joint meeting here tonight, I guess this will be the last time I have the opportunity to ask this question before town meeting. The Public Works Department budget, page 13, under the 54690 materials and supplies. It says loam, seed, and fertilizer, $11,500 for Brigham Street Cemetery. So why is this entry here? I could ask that question first and then read the next one or read it all. Guess I'll read it all. In the 2022-24 appropriations meeting at the 20-19 mark, Scott says, quote, "The contractor owes us another overseeding." Are we supplying the materials under this 54690 budget item? And is that going to be used for the overseeing to be used by the contractor?
Happy to answer your questions, Lisa. So under the cemetery's operating budget, the item that Lisa identified, 54690 materials and supplies, we've always had loam and seed and fertilizer in the budget under that item. That's not a new item. The term that what I do when I'm presenting the budget, I thought it's helpful for the recipients to see why things have changed. So you'll see in the bold, it says added Brigham Street Burial Ground. That's not solely for Brigham Street Burial Ground. That's for all of our cemeteries. The general contractor did the improvements on Brigham Street. They owe us the first cut and an overseed for this spring. After that, we'll do a substantial completion inspection, walk the property, make sure it's okay, and then we'll be eligible to release retainage. That $11,500 covers loam, seed, and fertilizer for all of our cemeteries. They all get treated multiple times a year. This specific one, Brigham Street, will need, obviously, its summer treatment. It's fall treatment, again in the spring, and again early summer. So that's not a new item. That's always been in there. And the contractor does owe us completion of the project, which will be an overseed and a cut.
All right, but that's under his budget, not ours.
Correct. That's why we kept retainage on the project. Yes, so he completes it.
And then you also said that we have resources available in the appropriations, and you're going to talk to the Historic Commission to see if they are interested in trees. Did that happen already?
No. The Historic District Commission expressed interest in some further improvements on the grounds. I'm not sure whether they're interested in trees or some additional markers for where the burials are. If you're on Brigham Street looking at the middle of the cemetery grounds, to the rear left is where the burials were. It's one of the thoughts was to have some denotation there. I'm not sure what they're thinking about, just to show this is the area where there's burials. The rest of it is was never used for burials. So I'm not sure what the commission's gonna want to do.
Okay, but that would be included under the Article 25 of the 137,500.
Correct.
Okay, and then I guess lastly on that, since we're talking about that, in the back of the property, there's a lot of refuse still left over with leaves and branches and stuff like that. Are they gonna clean that out, or they plan just to leave it there the way that is?
I haven't done the substantial completion inspection yet, so I'll have to look.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's hear that question.
Very good. Julianne.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Julianne.
There's, you know how like with White Cliffs, there were rules and regulations from the Department of Interior for redoing or revitalizing an old building. Are there similar rules for old cemeteries? I thought I read somewhere that, for example, you know, they recommend oak trees over other kinds of trees to be consistent with the time of the cemetery. What kind of guidelines would you go by if trees are recommended?
I'd have to look at what species are appropriate there. I know we had a lot of oak mortality and hemlock fungi is there. I would not want to plant hemlocks there. They'd be susceptible to the fungi that's in the rear of the parcel. So
yeah, but my question was, are there recommendations from any, you know, like the Department of Interior, for example?
I don't imagine the Department of Interior is going to advise us on what species tree gets planted at the cemetery. But before I went to a commission and they said we want trees, I would look into what are the appropriate species there. They haven't done that yet, so I'm not digging into what trees we should put at the cemetery yet until they ask.
Well, I'm the liaison, so I can reach out to them and tell them to start thinking about that. So
Norm and Bob were interested in possibly even some small granite markers to denote the four corners of the roughly burial ground in the back left side. So I'm not sure if they're looking for trees or markers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions from members of either board before we open it up to the public? Julianne.
So there's one item that is the same thing every single year, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it up last time, but it's under Executive Office, Economic Development, which is $1,100. So I guess it's a two-part question. Number one, do we use that $1,000 for anything? And number two, given, you know, the downtown revitalization and everything, how would you budget more? And could you budget more?
I'm going to give you a longer answer than you probably want, but when I was walking in the store, you know, in December, I long thought of an economic development coordinator, and you all in the CIP's Master Planning Implementation Committee were thinking along the same lines. So that would be a position that we could certainly need, use, and benefit from, but it didn't make it into this round. As for the 1,100, I don't know the exact answer to that because I don't have that budget document in front of me because I wasn't sure what the questions would be. But Diane, I don't know if you have the document close just to find out what that 1,100. I don't know if it's a CMRPC assessment or if it's that's usually in the planning department. So I don't know where that 1,100 resides and what it goes for.
Yeah, I can look into that.
Okay, so basically you're saying that it's too late to put some money into that right now? And
well, I would say yes. I wouldn't want to make any more adjustments to the budget. It's just at this point, we think we have it balanced. We have, you know, some feedback from financial planning and the appropriations committee in terms of what people's tolerances are for budget increases and tax increases. So if there's another way to fund it, maybe that's a discussion we can have separate from the operating budget in 25.
Oh, interesting. Okay, all right.
I saw Jason Little's hand go up maybe with an answer to that 1100.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I know that that budget's typically only covered our dues to the Corridor 9 Chamber of Commerce. That's simply been solely used for that and meetings of the chamber.
Oh. Okay.
That's historically what that budget line's been used for.
That was going to be my guess.
That makes sense. Thank you, Jason.
So do we always just decide to do that, or we don't discuss it, or? I mean, the benefits and the pros and cons of keeping everything the same way? Where does that come in to talk about? Oh, no, I guess Jason doesn't have anything to say about it, but.
Well, I mean, if you're asking me specifically through the chair, my answer for that would be that's one of the budget lines that's controlled by the town administrator's office. So it would be up to them what they submit under that. You know, it's been a longstanding practice that the administrator's office has belonged to the chamber and participated in that process with them.
I think, you know, as Julianne hinted, I think it's a good idea for the board to have some serious discussions about economic development. And I similar to Tim, when I got involved with Northborough government, I was shocked that there was neither a committee nor a person dedicated to economic development in the town of Northborough. And that's really surprising. And I think that's something we should work on. And, you know, we can't solve that right now for this budget, but I think we should talk about that soon. And Laura, I see your hand up.
You know, yeah, along those lines, I would love to see a list of what the benefits are of that membership. I mean, because I haven't seen anything about it. I don't know if there's events we'd be participating in or if there's activities that might benefit the town. So any update on that would be really greatly appreciated.
I know I just sent an email to local businesses to participate in one of their free business expos. So I used local cable and I used the clerk's office to promote that for our business community. So there's a conduit there. I don't know if the 495 partnership is another membership that might come out of there. So there's a couple that we can look at for memberships that we've been a part of and look at the benefits. Obviously, from an economic development standpoint, you want to have those relationships with whether it's Route 9, the corridor or the 495 partnership. And I don't know what the dues are for that particular one.
Is that something that we can participate in, or is that only for businesses?
In terms of going to one of their events? No, it's a municipal, I mean, even though you're a member, they have either full fee or reduced fee for their business breakfasts. So you can attend. If you attend as a municipal, you're going to pay a reduced rate for the breakfast versus a non-member rate. So yeah, there are benefits to you.
Thank you.
Lisa.
And on that, Tim, do you know how many businesses that we do have that belong to it from the Northborough perspective?
I would venture to say that mostly all retail and hospitality, food establishments would have it, but I would have to look at the exact number. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, we should probably check on that, see how well it's worked.
And I think because there's the Marlborough, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think because there's a Marlborough chamber and a Westboro chamber, and I think Northborough businesses can go both directions. So maybe a fun topic to take a closer look at in the future.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think talking economic development as a whole would be something important for this board to do. Thanks. Any other questions or comments on that item? Any other questions or comments in general from members of either board before we open it up to the public? Okay, this being a public hearing, if you have any questions, comments, input, or anything else on our annual budget, please raise your electronic hands and I'll be more than happy to recognize you. Not seeing any hands up. Only a few members in our audience tonight. Jason, as always, the budget is pretty self-explanatory. You do a good job putting that together. Tim, for a very good first run through for you. Yes. And Appropriations Committee and everybody else. I'm stalling for time just to see if any member of the public wants to raise their hand. Laura, did you have a question or comment?
I'm not the public, but I did have some thoughts that I wanted to share just, as we look to the year ahead. And I am so grateful for all that Jason's done, all that Tim's done. But I do want to just recognize the fact that in the future, I hope we as a board can do a lot more to save money. I know that we all know this, but when we approve these projects, we have a responsibility with the taxpayers. And I feel like when we have these big line items and we're not being more conservative with them, our voters are left in the lurch where they have to either absorb these huge tax increases, or they have to leave, or they're getting forced out of their homes. And so I hope that we can look at some policies in the future that are going to be rewarding more conservative behavior. I think that, we'll hopefully be able to work more with the Appropriations Committee, more with Financial Planning Committee, and really look ahead for where we can save money, unilaterally. And so, I've got some ideas for things that I've shared with the town administrator that I'd like to look at in the future. I just want to acknowledge that this has been a really tough year, and I appreciate everything that we have done. I just hope that in the year ahead, we could do a lot more to help, with the tax burden. And that was really, I appreciate the budget this year and all the work that went into it and all these discussions. I just hope we can do more. And that was all I wanted to share on that regard.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, I think one of the most important decisions we're making in this budget relative to what you spoke about was to separate out the town accountant position from the finance director position, which will allow the finance director to spend a lot more time thinking about some of these big picture questions, looking out for opportunities for savings, and given that he will no longer need to be doing the mechanics of the town accountant work. And I hope there will be some savings realized by that. I don't know if they'll be as soon as next year or anything else. But I think there's an opportunity that if for that, I think it's a worthwhile investment.
Thank you.
Kristen.
So just in the interest of giving people another minute to think about a question if they have one. I understand that there are a lot of expenses coming up, and people may be sort of slightly freaking out and worried about, oh no, my tax bill is going to go up. And ultimately, it will because of all these projects. But I hope people understand that it's kind of like if you want to make money, you have to invest money. If you want to save money, you have to invest money too. So sometimes an investment in a certain way will save money down the road. So it might not be the cheapest way to do it tomorrow, but then for the year after that and the subsequent years, that less expensive way in the initial response gets more expensive as the years go on. Like say a green building, right? So like a building, I'm just thinking about the town hall conversations we had with the architects. I learned a lot from being on that committee, and it really is an investment in a certain kind of building can save the town money down the road. Is really hard for people right now to have to be the ones that are, investing in a couple of new buildings in town, or 3 new buildings maybe, or lots of renovations and that kind of thing. But I hope people can put their longer eye views on when they're getting ready to have to pay their bills. But I also hope that our senior citizens who won't maybe be around to enjoy, say, especially like Peasley School renovations, they get all the tax breaks and everything. I know we've put certain things into place in the last year, and I hope that obviously we're looking after those folks too. So anyway, just some theories that have been going through my head.
Jeff Knight.
Hi, thank you. I actually really appreciate what Kristen was just talking about. And I think being someone who joined this process very late in the game, sometimes a little information is almost dangerous, right? It's like I don't have all the information, just a little information. I've been trying to get caught up. But a couple of things were kind of been thinking the way Chris is talking about as far as investing and planning and strategy and 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 maybe even some guiding principles in some of our financial policies. It's pretty alarming to me when the fire chief says we need, if we get 8 firefighters right now, we still need more than that, because that doesn't happen in a year. That doesn't happen overnight. That's if for us to be that understaffed, that means that something's been let go for a long time. And this is that's one example out of many. When I look at the number of vehicles that Scott needs, and Scott, I really appreciate you answering my questions, and I can see, I understand. I'm understanding the needs. That again doesn't happen overnight. I think George at our last meeting made an outstanding point about, when we accept grants, we don't always know at the time that we're accepting a grant what's going to prevent a structural deficit when the grant time ends out. So I just think that getting the town accountant in place so that, we have a kind of that more of that financial planning aspect and kind of coming up with some guiding principles that we can all, one, have far more time to plan this process, and I think a little more interaction and just a little more strategy, because like I said, I think I feel like we're treading water right now. That's what it feels like to me, is that this is a water treading year, and nobody likes to hear that, and no one likes to experience that. So I think that our goal should be that 5 years from now, we already knew what was coming. We've been planning for it, and we have an idea for how we're going to handle it, and we're there. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of echo what Kristen said and just add that little piece. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, I will ask the public. Oh, good, Julianne.
So to pick up on that train of thought, oh gosh, I'm sorry about the dog. So if Jason is going to have more time to do planning, will our financial planning committee be able to, meet earlier and really lay out I would advocate for a 10-year plan.
Scott.
Question.
Yeah, let me
The question.
answer kind of Jillian's question from one perspective. I think it's come up in both appropriations and financial planning that this year was a compressed time schedule, but that moving away, or even in a normal calendar year, often those committees ramp up in preparation for the budget and in preparation for town meeting, rather than having meetings throughout the entire year. And so I think you'll see both financial planning and appropriations that there'll be additional meetings for the sole purpose of more strategic planning. I think financial planning will have a meeting in May after town meeting. Appropriations will get started early autumn, early fall, rather than late into December. So that's Juliet, something's going to happen in both those committees, that they're meeting in addition to the normal budget reviews or capital plan reviews. And that's an opportunity. We'll talk a little bit more appropriations, but George has some really good ideas that he submitted to the committee on some future strategic elements, and we'll be taking those up. And I think you'll see both committees meet throughout the year rather than just in ramping up for budget season in town.
Thank you.
Scott.
I appreciate that.
Oh, thanks. I just wanted to add one element, which was one thing that got missed this year was the meeting in the annual meeting in December, where we typically lay out the financial trend monitoring system, whereby we look back at trends try to identify anything alarming or that would cause physical distress to the community. We also try to put together a context for leading into the budget season of a 5-year projection and looking at where it's going and looking, and then having a solid capital plan that feeds into that. And I think going forward, whether it be five years or 10 years, and I think we're starting to see the value in extending those projections out further, because we have some pretty big projects on the horizon. I mean, we're seeing them like starting to move into the timeline of the feasibility study for Peasley School, and the town hall project was a TBD in our plan for the longest time. And it's, when it's TBD, it's not zero is the point. It could be a escalating quickly construction cost for some of these projects. So we definitely need to get back to a less urgent cycle next year. So I see that, there was the changes in personnel that happened this year, and it's not an excuse as much as it's just where we are timeline wise. So I think that the next year, I think just having consistent staff is going to be an important thing to work through for the next year. And I just wanted to add that I can't stress enough how important I think doing some financial projections of the cost of these things going forward and coming up with a plan to how are we going to pay for this capital. We look at these capital, we're on a replacement schedule a lot for all these vehicles, and there's a need for them, but they have to play into there has to be finances involved to support all of those. And that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Jason. Lisa.
Thank you, Jason. I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think, this has been a very unusual year, certainly with so many people who did leave, and separating people who've been doing 2 positions instead of just one. Just having everything come at once. I think that that for so many years, the buildings have just languished. And that's why we're in the mess we're in today, that we'll replace our vehicles in a 5-year, but if the roof's leaking, it shouldn't be more than a month before that leak is fixed, because it isn't just the roof, it's everything that falls under the water. So part of the roof, part of the insulation, part of the floor, all sorts of damage that's caused by water shouldn't be waiting until a year or so of appropriations coming in and getting money for that. There's this huge damage in a lot of these buildings that we have, and they're let go for so long that there's so much more expense on the other side of having to fix that. So I think that the projection of the 40, 50-year building plan, and that they have, at least a 10-year maintenance program, whether it be paint or whether it be checking caulking or whatever. There's a lot that's gone on that we didn't really realize. We weren't here, but we didn't realize how much everything is coming at one point. And that's, speaking as a senior, there's not going to be a way around it. We have a limited income. It's not going to change. And every time the tax bill goes up, we have to make a choice whether or not we can stay or we have to move. And I think that those things come into play a lot more now in 2024, with everything going up, everything be food and insurance and doctor bills, and everything under the sun has gone up. I don't think one thing hasn't gone up except my income. That's all. So I think we really have to start looking at this. It's just not an endless pot, and it's not a blank check. And I think we really have to start being serious about that. So maybe even the voters will say something this year that they're just not going to do some of it. But I think we're all aware of it. I appreciate, again, having Jason back. I think it was a great coup to get you back, and with the abilities and the background knowledge, and I think working together as a team and having new members coming on board is great. And I appreciate everything that everybody's done this year. Thank you.
very excited to say that we've kept the public hearing open long enough that we have public comment. Mike Tejan, I'm bringing you in. If you could unmute, identify yourself, let us know what's on your mind.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Mike Tejan, 30 Auger Ave. Just wanted to say, to echo some of the comments I've been hearing, just that yeah, you know, there's a lot of families in Northborough that have to say no to a lot of things that they want, or even a lot of things that they need. And you know, seeing the expenses that are coming, the increases in you know, single family home taxes, you know, there has to be, to really echo like Laura's point earlier, you know, maybe a harder and harder look at some things that we maybe even need or really want, but unfortunately may have to start saying no to more things, to ease the tax burden on the taxpayers here in Northborough. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments or questions from either committee or public? Going once. Going twice. All right, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to close the joint public hearing with the Appropriations Committee.
Is there a second from the board?
Second.
Lots of them. Motion made by Julianne, seconded by, I think I heard Laura's voice, seconded by Laura. Any discussion on closing the public hearing? Scott, any objection to closing the public hearing at this time?
No objection, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. All those in favor, Julianne?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Public hearing is now closed. Thank you very much to the Appropriations Committee and, of course, the staff for putting together this budget process. I'll be the millionth person to mention it. This was a compressed timeline, and I'm very happy we've got to this point where we are. Scott, if you want to do any particular business to adjourn or do anything else, now would be a good time.
No, I just express my my appreciation to staff as well, and the department heads on the presentation of their budgets. It was we can say that we didn't do as much as we wanted to, but boy, did we get everything done in a compressed time. And it's amazing how much we did get done. That's, I guess, that's the kind of way to look at it. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn the Appropriations Committee.
I motion we adjourn the Appropriations Committee.
Moved by George.
Second.
Thanks,
Janice
Jeff.
second. Or I.
We'll give it. We'll give it to Jeff. He was on screen.
Okay.
Let's do a roll call vote. George.
Aye.
Janice. I didn't hear Janice.
Yeah.
Have her shout out one more time.
Janice, go ahead
Aye.
again.
Did
you hear? Did you hear her? Okay.
Yeah. Jeff.
Aye.
Tim.
Aye.
Scott Rogers is also aye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thanks, everyone. Good
appropriation.
night.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Okay. Next up on our agenda is approval and execution of the April 22nd, 2024 town meeting warrant. Tim, have there been any changes to the town meeting warrant since we saw it last week?
Trying to figure out the timing of the sticker shock for the police station and the rationale for taking out the hook truck. I know I sent a memo regarding that. And probably 2 or 3 documents, and then the estimate from the architect. And we just actually had this discussion with financial planning. So that's short answer, Mr. Chair, is no, except for those 2 caveats of keeping the hook truck, but passing over it and using those funds to do the actual siding replacement at the police station.
Lisa?
Oh, yeah, I do want to talk about that. This would be the time to do it, right? So
Sure.
So at this point, I've looked over a lot of the numbers. I have a lot of questions about it. I think that, well, let's see, which pile do I pick up? So just in looking at the quotes and at the costs and at the contingencies, I had a long discussion with the New England rep from Versatech, who's also, they just bought out AZAC. And he handles all of they're the manufacturers for all this type of material. He certainly showed me a lot of different materials and what they have. And now they're working on different projects where they're making materials that are expected to last for 25, 30 years or more, lifetime things. And that as they perfect that, they're bringing it to the market. Of course, it's costing lots of money. He did tell me that they will not honor any quotes past a week. So whatever goes in for a quote, it's only good for a week. And based on the escalation and the going from 70,000 to 540,000, I just don't think we should move on this. I think this is one of those things that we're going to have to say, what are we going to be able to do with our 70 and do some more investigation on it, because $500,000 to what was supposed to be paint a building, take out the broken pieces, put them back. You know, some of the AZAC was already replaced, and there's some very small sections that need to be replaced on the building. Not all of it, not all the trim looks like it needs to be replaced. I think there's an awful lot of speculation as to what things are going to cost. A labor bill of $111,000 is just phenomenal, and I just can't get behind it. I don't think that the general public should be asked to do that with having a fire station and having a town office and such. So I think we really need to rethink this project and the realities of maybe not being able to do anything to this magnitude for another year. But
so, Mr. Chair, if I may, the quote is something we did after the fact, and then we went to an architect to ask what their estimate would be. This will be a publicly procured bidded job. We have to go out to bid. So if there's a group that you're talking to that does this type of work, we encourage them to take part in that bidding process so we get the lowest possible price by the most qualified bidder. This building needs to be weather tight. It's not weather tight right now. We shot a video of this, I don't know, a week ago now, and I think it's been out on the cable channel and on YouTube through the cable studio. And every time I look at it, I'm just amazed by the number of nails that are coming out. And I don't know what's going to happen when they do exploratory work to pull those boards off. But to do industrial grade vinyl siding, that's just what the estimate from the architect has told us, what the labor, expenses, insurance, profit, overhead, all those things add up to the 540, which is a horrible number. It's obscene. I'm hoping it's lower. If we go out to bid and we're competitive with it, when we write that bid spec, it could be lower, but it's not. It's not something we could say, well, I hope it's lower and go out to bid, and then it's not lower and the building continues to take water. Because that's just not a responsible thing for us. I wish we didn't have to discover it at a late hour as we did. But I think, you know, everybody talks about this time crunch, but in a lot of ways, these committees have worked together to find the best answer given that compressed time frame. Because we had the 70,000 last year. We added 130 based on an estimate that we came back and we were going to add it to this warrant article, if we remember correctly, and get to 200. And then someone on one of the committees, it could have been this board, said, hey, you should, you know, get a better estimate. So we went to Appropriation Committee and asked for $5,000 to do an architectural look of what it would cost. And Scott, you know, took that on in a 2-week time frame. Incredible turnaround to get the number that we don't like. We don't want it, but it's true. We have to do the work that's there. We have to bid it out. We have to get an appropriation for it because the building will crumble even worse. So within a year, you went from painting to siding to nails coming out to the tune of 4 inches all the way around that building. Scott walked it. I only saw the video, and I only go to the police station for meetings. I don't know walking around the whole building, but it is in bad shape. So I just want to clarify that it's outrageous, but I don't think you have another choice. So my recommendation is to go forward with it, go to bid, and let's get that building encapsulated where it's weather tight. And it's not the best solution, but it's going to get you through another 20 years. And that's, some of the goals we talked about with the police chief at one of the appropriation committee meeting or financial planning meeting was, there might be a design review of that building in 2029, but he doesn't think you need to build out anything elaborate beyond 29. So I've compressed a lot of things into that thought, but I just, if the chair or the committee, the select board wants to hear from Scott, who did the work to get the number from the architect, that might prove helpful. And again, I apologize it came up the way it did. It's just, it's late. And it's unfortunate that it is as high as it is, but we still have to go out to bid. So it's just an estimate, and hopefully we can drive that number down.
Lisa, then Laura.
In reference to the nail question, the nails are sticking out because when the job was done, did some research, when the job was done by the penal men, the men who were come out to do the painting, they weren't allowed to knock the nails back in. And you can see paint on the nail shaft. You can see paint on some of the side pieces of the wood. So nobody went before them and resecured the clapboarding before they were painting, which is kind of crazy because you would think, why would you do that? But that's why you've got a picture of some 2 inches of nail coming out into the air. It's not that the whole building looks like that. And even the trim around the building, the ASAC is not, there's ASAC replacement of some wood pieces, but some of those pieces were not the entire length of the building. They were short pieces. There's no peeling on the building. And I don't know, when the question of watertight came in, there was never any discussion of a watertight issue. So I don't know where that happened. They did a new roof after 2016. And the question then rises is, if we're spending that kind of money, are we seriously expecting a 40-year-old building to last for another 20 years? When you start to look at the cost of everything, and the escalating cost up and down, I think that, again, in discussing this with the rep, he said, that's crazy money for the product, for the square footage. I think how many square feet? 80,000 square feet? The square footage is $30 a yard, $30 a square foot. And he said, when you get prices like that, it's because people don't really want to do the work and they're throwing out the highest price they can get. So if you want us to get it done, we'll pay for it that way. 8,000 square feet. So even if you were to go back and go re-nail it and check it out, I honestly don't believe for 1 minute that there's what. I never heard of water problems like they have at the fire station. There's definitely problems there. But I would like to be clear about the seriousness of how it's portrayed, because 3 sides of the building aren't faded because they don't get a lot of sun. The front of the building does. There's 3 sections of the front, not 3 sides of the building. So as much as the videotape was made, I'm afraid the video might have been a little bit slanted and not as real as when we walked around it. And there's an engineer walked around with us, and so it wasn't just ladies looking at this. So I really have a hard time believing that this is a $540,000 job.
So can I just ask a clarifying question, just so we should not secure the building for this year?
I can hit nails in it. I don't see why. Number one, I find it hard to believe we have to pay $5,000 to ask an architect to do a job that some people will go out there and quote on if they want the work. $5,000? That's crazy money.
That's a good point. It was 2,800 in all fairness. It was 2,800 for us to get an architect out there. We asked appropriations for 5,000 because we estimated that. And we're not estimators. So that's why we went to an architect to ask them what they thought it would be to wrap that building. So we have a professional in the business that's telling us this is what's needed. I don't know what else to put forward to the board.
Julianne, I see your hand, but I saw Laura's first.
Okay,
Laura?
okay.
So my gut is that price tag is unfathomable and unconscionable right now with all the other expenses and things that have to be done. And I would really prefer to get an estimate that is in line, but 540,000 is way too much for this project, and we've got too many other expensive projects on the horizon. And I understand that we're pulling this together at the 11th hour. And again, Jason, Tim, and all of the staff that pulled our budgets together, I appreciate it. But I just think we need to be more conservative in how we go about this. And I don't like the idea of doing this 3 weeks before town meeting, just rushing this through. That's my only comment at this point on that.
Julianne.
So Tim, what would be the timeline on this? So you say if it passes town meeting, it goes out to bid. And that would mean if all things went well, when would work actually start?
I couldn't even hazard a guess. Once we get to town meeting, if it were to pass, we have 2 months before the beginning of the fiscal year. If we bid it ahead of that, because obviously we don't have the appropriation until the fiscal year begins. July, it's probably 45 days if it starts then. So it's August 15th, maybe September 1 is when work starts. I don't know the timing. And Scott unfortunately signed off because he's ill. So he knows those particular details. All I can tell you is just look at your history in terms of you had an estimate for 70,000. It wasn't enough. And then we thought we could get through with another 130 to get to 200. It wasn't enough. We have to publicly procure. We have to go to bid competitively. We think because we have an architect's estimate that 460 or 540 will be enough. If you wait another year, it's going to be higher. That's all I'm going to tell you. Because I know the history, right? 70, 30, 200, and now I'm at 540.
Yeah, but those were different projects. 70 was just a
they were, but the time and rain and water and sun has made it worse. It's exacerbated the problem. Same thing you have with the cost for the new fire station versus the estimate from many, many years ago versus the brick building that's now taking water, that's not wood, it's probably newer than the police station. I don't know the time of that building for fire doing brick. Brick makes perfect sense as a substance to build. Wood is not supposed to last you that long if you don't maintain it.
Oh, can I just add one thing through the chair? Just on the basis of mechanics, anything that's free cash or available funds are used to fund the articles. Those would be available immediately after town meeting. Just to clarify that point, the funds would be available after town meeting votes it. And typically, in our warrant articles, we make it clear that it's would be available immediately in our votes that we make. We make that explicitly in the motion. And this particular article was proposed to be 100% available funds. It's the $70,000 painting article being reappropriated and $470,000 of free cash. So that would be available immediately to move forward.
So that's good to know. So that timeline could be accelerated, right?
Yeah, it would be right. It'd be May 1. We're hitting the ground with design specs to get them on the street.
Okay.
So you pick up 45 days anyways.
Okay, and one more question. We're looking to invest $500,000 in the exterior of the building. Are you saying that the interior of the building is just fine, or are we looking at big expenditures on the interior of the building?
I'm not going to speak for the chief. I know he shared with the Appropriations Committee and with the Financial Planning Committee what he thought he would need after the 2029 study was completed, but he's estimating either a small renovation and or small addition, I think were his words, but he should be asked that question.
He's here. I don't know if he's, there he goes. He put his hand up.
Chief, I'm going to bring you in.
Okay, no one wants to look at your butt.
You come in if you could unmute, turn on your camera if you'd like, and provide whatever information you can to help us out.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
We do.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to get the camera going here.
We don't see you, but that's all right.
Here we are.
Hey.
How's everyone?
Hi, Chief.
Happy April Fool's Day, everyone.
Yeah, same to you. Make sure you're telling the truth.
Yeah. So just I've been watching the whole meeting right now. You know, as far as the interior of the building goes, I think Tim nailed it on the head a little bit. He's been in there. We do have some needs down the road, and we you know, I think it was 2029 for a feasibility study. You know, there's you know, I could foresee a possible small addition, but the general structure interior, we're doing okay, and I see us being in that building for another 30 years with some TLC inside and out. You know, it's tight right now, but we're surviving. We, as I said, a little addition. There's some quirky things about the building that I'd like to see updated and changed around a little bit. But overall, we're doing okay. And I think, you know, a lot of people would, in my profession in law enforcement, would be like, oh, you need to tell the board you need a new building. But I'm also realistic and understand what the fire department is doing, and rightfully so. They need the building more than I need the building. Town hall needs a building more than I need a building. So we're doing okay. We don't have any major issues inside, other than some, you know, quirky little things. If we do add staff a little bit, we're going to need a bigger locker room, things to that nature. But just a little TLC, and having Scott and Sean on board now, helping us maintain the interior has been great. And obviously the discussion here is the exterior, which we all know about, but we're okay inside, Julian.
Okay, thanks, Chief. I want to add a little to this and restate what Tim said. This is what we have here for $540,000 is a cost estimate. It's not a bid. There are not specific products mentioned. There's not a specific company listed of who will do the work. It's not gone through the competitive bidding process. It hasn't even been fully designed to the bid specs to allow that to occur. Because of the cost for this, I think over $100,000, you need to go through a formal bid process. $50,000 might be $100,000 for construction. You need to go through a formal bid process. To do that, you can't just say, hey, everybody, come look at our building and tell us what you think. You need to have an architect draw up the bid specs, which is a technical document that describes precisely what needs to be done, how much square footage of this and how many of this, and you know what quality of materials and everything else. And then it goes out to bid. The ideal timeline for this would have been, if this had been noticed, say, 6 months ago, we could have found a way, I think, to fund that design portion and then gone out to bid prior to now and had bid specs, bid results in our hand, and gone to town meeting with actual bid results that we would know would be, this is going to be the cost. Cost estimators, broadly speaking, estimate a little bit on the high side, not intentionally, but they don't want to look bad. And a cost estimator looks bad if they estimated $540,000 and it comes in at $750,000. They don't really look bad if they estimated $540,000 and it comes in at $275,000. no one's going to complain about the cost estimator if it works. Technically, what they're aiming for is the midpoint of bids. So if you got 5 bids, the middle of them might be around 540, but they would probably be a couple less expensive. That's usually the way that cost estimates wind out. So we, at this point, because this is when town meeting is, if we're going to try to fix this problem this year, the best number we have is $540,000. I think we all have reason to believe it will be less than that, but we don't know how much less than that. And I don't think it would be appropriate to specifically ask for anything less than that. This is the number we have, and we can decide to just not do it and go through that process and do the design work and come back next year with a bid number. The condition of the building will worsen between now and then, and it will end up costing more. Laura.
I guess it's hard for me to keep hearing, like, if we don't do this now, the price is going to go up. If we don't go, it's a hard way for me to make a decision because we are rushing into this. And my preference would be, let's go through that process and let's get a really accurate idea and hard numbers that are true, and then come back. And if that means the fall, it's a few months, it gives us the time to really make sure that we are being responsible with the residents' money. Because if we ask for 540, we're going to start taxing off of that number, and it's just not fair. Working, okay, let me understand. So
I'll let Jason explain it, but we tax based on actual expenses, not based on the appropriation.
Okay.
Jason.
Oh, I would just add that this has no additional taxpayer impact in that it's being funded with proposed to be funded with available funds, and not, it is taxpayer money in that the taxpayers get a choice in what we do with the free cash and available funds, but there would be no added tax impact as a result of the $540,000.
And Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, if let's say this turns out to be $400,000 and there's 140 left over, that just rolls into the following year's free cash, correct?
Correct, absolutely, yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but my preference would still be to go through that full proper bid process and make sure we're getting an accurate number, because I don't, this number feels way too high to me at the last minute. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Laura. Lisa?
Some of this understanding of what free cash is, it's not free. It came from someplace. So free cash came from jobs that weren't completed or jobs that were overestimated and the money wasn't used, right, Jason?
Yeah, free cash is basically, it's the town's fund balance, it's retained earnings. If you're to equate it to some other commonly used terminology, free cash is just the definition of it in the state of Massachusetts. It's what it's called. It goes through a certification process. So the money is derived from revenues that come in above budget when we set our tax rate. Anything that comes in above the budget that we set in the fall for the tax rate. And then they're also generated from unspent appropriations. So money that's left in every single budget at the end of the year closes out and becomes part of free cash.
Okay. So if this money is here, why do we have so many buildings that have roof leaks that are still, well, this isn't a question for you. It's just I suppose a question to ask. We have got 4 buildings with water roof problems, leaking roof problems, serious leaking roof problems. And yet we don't have that set up for funding. We don't have that in line for getting some stuff done on that. Where it could come from that kind of funding. Why don't we look into those as well? Why do those why did those sit there for quite some time sometimes? Like I remember the library was a couple of years for the last time it had leaks. Why does that happen? Because it's not just the roof that needs to be repaired, everything underneath it that gets ruined in the way down. So why aren't we working more toward alleviating those problems when we don't have any water included into the police station? We just heard that. But there's other jobs that we do have. So I'm a little confused as to why some of those things are left. And Tim looks like he has an answer.
Tim.
No, this is the second time you mentioned that other buildings have water leaks. What buildings are you referring to that have water leaks today that we're not addressing?
Well, there were 4 that were on the ARPA list. One was definitely the library. One was 4 West Main Street. Off the top of my head, I can't think of the other 2.
Melican.
Well, the schools are.
Well, Melican's gym, I've just seen.
Yeah, the damage to the gym, the floor, the ceiling tiles. I mean, those things cost money. Why it wasn't addressed earlier? That's probably not our thing, it's probably the school thing, but that water damage is huge. That to me is the stuff that we need to start to be serious about.
I think we're getting a little off track. I mean, we have an article for consideration for the town meeting warrant. It's in the warrant for the police station. I have no problem talking about prioritization of different articles or different projects, but at this point, we're not going to be able to, for example, insert an article for some amount of money to fix the Melican roof or any other roof. I will say the library roof has been resolved. The CIP funded a project a couple of years ago, and that's done. I don't know about the others. Yeah.
Can I say something about the police station? So, I mean, okay, so is it so expensive? At least partly because of the whole prevailing wage dilemma on space.
That's part of it.
Yeah. So I think it took me a while to get used to numbers and estimates that are presented to the select board that the town has to pay for things being like 3 times higher than, or maybe even more than what I would pay if, say, I were gonna reside a house in Northborough, right? Like you feel like $500,000 is to have $1 million. Like you could buy a building for that. You could do a lot of work with that amount of money, but towns don't get to be like regular people. So they have to pay prevailing wage. You can look this up. I did it my first year because I just didn't understand why everything was so expensive. And basically, it was something that was started to make things fair for the people doing the work so the towns didn't take advantage of them. And now it has ended up that towns are getting taken advantage of. And it's really crappy. And it's really frustrating. And what I'm hoping is if we do go ahead and say, okay, we'll put this in the warrant and let the voters decide. I mean, it may again be one of those long articles at town meeting and everybody wants to talk about it before they vote, but also we just, oh geez, where was I going with this? That it does end up, like it's money we allocate for this, but then it ends up being less expensive, and a certain amount of this is trusting that whoever, when it goes out to bid, the contractor is that gets the job is someone who, if it is only 350,000 and not 540, they won't say, oh, well, it's a town, we'll take what we can get. They will charge us what they actually did the work for, right? Because maybe, Laura's concerned that we're rushing into it and maybe we don't really know the actual condition as much as we should. And that is a concern, but I don't know, is it a dumb idea to trust that a contractor would do that, or is that possible? I don't know. Like, are we worried that we're going to get taken advantage of as well as just have to pay a lot of money for making our police station, putting it in, making it a functioning, not falling apart building? And I understand that, ultimately it will happen next year if it doesn't happen this year. And not even next year at this time, it would happen maybe in the fall or whatever. But I guess that's my question. Like, is that a naive thing to do? And I guess my question is I don't know whoever, Tim or Mitch or maybe Jason, to know, is there any reason that we shouldn't trust, or should we?
No, we have staff that deals with facilities now. Scott's knowledgeable about buildings. Sean's more knowledgeable.
Right.
We have the state procurement that tells us how we need to bid a project. We get to check references. That's part of the process. Sometimes they have to be DCAM certified. That's part of the process. So it's a competitive bidding environment. So we're going to get bids from competent vendors to provide the service. I mean, you're looking at an $80 million operating budget and then a capital plan of over $5 million. Some of it's borrowing, some of it's free cash. We vet things the best we can at our expertise level, and we rely on others like a consultant or an architect to give us a deeper level of understanding and knowledge. So that's what I think we've done in this instance. So that's why we're promoting to do the work that's proposed. You could take every article and apply the same thought process of, it's just too much money, let's not do it. And I'll just tell you that the community can do that. It's just, don't be afraid of spending money today, because you might have to spend money tomorrow. Because tomorrow's dollars, as we all know, because we've talked about it for 45 minutes, about how much everything has gone up, from insurance to gasoline. So it's not going away, but that doesn't negate the problem that you still have. You have a building that is deteriorating before your eyes, and we're proposing to fix it with a horrible number. It is, but it doesn't change the fact that I would recommend you still should do it, because it needs to be done.
Well, and I also kind of feel like in the grand scheme of the budget, it's a little less than 540, because we had the 70,000 from the painting article, right? So I don't know. I think in the grand scheme of the budget, it's a little easier to swallow that amount of money going towards keeping the police station in good shape is something I can swallow.
A couple additional thoughts. I'll get to you in a second, Juliana. I want to say before I forget what's on my mind. One, we have talked about, and we've run into situations where there was something being discussed some number of years ago, and the decision was, no, do that later. The fire station construction project is the most glaring example of that, of what happens over time. Things get more expensive. I know that this project was discussed somewhere around 5 or 6 years ago, and it was put off, and then COVID happened and it put off more. And then it turned out we couldn't get inmates to do the work the way that, perhaps some people thought we could. Now, a project that was probably 5 or 6 years ago was probably just a simple restaining project with a little bit of repair is now a lot more. I fear that if we go ahead and say, no, do it later, we're doing exactly the same thing that none of the people on this call were part of that decision 5 or 6 years ago. But that's kind of where we are. I don't want us to be in that same position where in a couple of years, someone looks back at us and says, you should have done it because it would have been cheaper. And now it's even worse. And now there's even more deterioration. The other thing that I'm going to suggest is that what we're talking about now is trying to get town meeting appropriation of $540,000 so that bids could be drawn, the specs can be drawn up and it can go out to bid. We hope it will be lower. I've heard the DPW director talk about the way that this was estimated is with high-end commercial siding, something that might last 40 years. Looking at the estimate, the siding item for just the material of the siding is $235,000 of the $540,000 of that, plus a number of other things in there that add up to that is just material costs just for the siding. Maybe it's worthwhile for us to talk about doing something a little bit less than the best commercial siding as a way to save a little bit of money. given that the building is already, approaching 20 years old, that maybe we don't worry about the siding lasting 40 years, because maybe in 40 years we'll be talking about something else. I think it should, certainly last at least 20 years. I'm not a construction expert. I'm not saying that's the best idea, but maybe my suggestion is maybe we ask Tim to ask Scott to go back to the cost estimator and say, hey, can you just punch in a different number? Put in a step or two below, something that's still good but might last 20 years instead of 40 years. Put that into that siding item to see how much that drops down. That's a quick thing. I'm sure we could have that number by town meeting, so that at least we can talk about that as, an option. And then once town meeting approves the funding, we can still direct the department to go ahead and spend things in a particular way and write up the bid specs using, again, if we feel as a board that we want to use something less than high quality commercial materials on this, then maybe that's an option that we consider then. Right now, our choices are put this in town meeting warrant so that it can move forward, or not, and it does not move forward. And we'd have to bring it back at some later time. My hope is that we can get this work actually done this summer. And if we put it off, we will not get it done this summer. So those are my thoughts. And Julianne, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that this public bidding process, we're all clear about this. So the town has to accept the lowest bid. However, is there a caveat that if you are not happy with the lowest bidder for any reason, you think that, maybe they're going to cut corners or something like that, do you have the leeway to pick the contractor that you want, aside from this lowest bid?
It's the lowest and responsible bidder. Everybody misses the second piece, but the lowest and responsible. So you can, even if you got 3 bids or you got 1 bid, you can reject all bids. There's nothing that dictates you have to sign a contract with anybody who submits a bid.
Okay, good to know. And I just want to make a point that we talked earlier when appropriations was there, that appropriations and finance, if they can meet more often, this is the kind of discussion that probably would have, happened earlier, maybe even years earlier, and talked about it in conjunction with the fire station. So, I think we are where we are, but I'd like to see us, as we move into the future, have these conversations, not at the last minute, and hopefully not after a pandemic when everything is so sky high. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Okay. Lisa, I saw your hand up, but Scott, you also had your hand up, so I don't know if there was anything that you wanted to add to this conversation here.
Mr. Chairman, no, I just wanted to come in. I wasn't sure if there were any questions. I know Julian was asking some procurement questions, and if I could be of any assistance, I'm happy to do so.
Oh, I think
Tim, can I? Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Thanks, though.
Lisa?
Well, first off, I do want to, I don't want it to sound like I'm not interested in having the police station secure. I want it to not only be secure, I want it to look good. I want it to have a good appearance. And I think it's important that all of our municipal buildings have a good appearance, between the buildings, the lawns, the landscaping, all of that. I think it's very important to me, and I'm sure to a lot of people. If we look at the fact that if we wait for 6 months to get more detailed information, we don't know who the manufacturer is for the materials that we're proposing. We don't know what choices we have for materials, whether it be a hardy board type of material, a vinyl siding, reclapboarding and paint. We don't have even a close idea of what we're looking at, like we did with the fire station. We looked at different materials before we went out to bid, I'm assuming. And I think we should do the same thing, especially for this cost. You should be able to know apples and apples. And you don't know apples and apples right now. It's just materials and labor. And there's so much difference between materials and labor and what you might want to see. And I do believe the building was 40 years old. And I think you have to decide whether or not how long you want that building to last, or however it's going to last, or, it's like you said, Mitch, it's longevity and how much we're spending on keeping it looking and being a healthy building. So we did the roof a few years ago. And I think if there was any water intrusion, that would have started there. But I really think that if we wait for 6 months while we're getting through this rush of everything else coming through, that I don't know, I can't conceive that it would be a horrible thing to wait 6 months while we get more detailed information. I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying this is a rush. Everything's been a rush. And I think that the taxpayers, got a lot on their plate to deal with. So,
Lisa, do you think it would be less expensive if we waited 6 months?
Sure.
How would it be? How would the actual construction be less expensive if we waited?
If material costs have gotten to a point where builders aren't building and they're on hold, the material costs start to come down. They don't escalate forever. It's just like a cycle of everything. It starts, and whatever the market will bear. And then when the market starts not bearing it anymore, they have to come down in price. Now, I do know that this company already offered a reduction to the distributors, but the distributors didn't pass it on to the people buying. So they kept that.
This isn't a quote, Lisa. This is an estimate. There are no materials or distributors involved.
Well, the point that you asked me was, do I think the cost could go down? I'm saying yes, I think the cost could go down, because what will happen is the materials will get to a point where builders won't build because it'll cost them too much money to make what they want. So they're going to slow it down, and that's going to make the material costs go down.
And you think that's going to happen in the next 6 months?
Why not? Why not? We have a lot of things happening at the end of this year. And then those things are going to really depend. They're going to make a change in a lot of things, investments and everything else. So yes, I do think it could go down.
Scott?
No, just really quickly. I'm sorry, Laura. A lot of the things that are being described here, what type of material to use, colors, and the like, that all requires some design services. There is no budget to hire an architect to come up with detailed cost estimates for 2 or 3 different material options. That there's no funds for that right now. So in the event that was the desire of the board, there needs to be some funds appropriated for that work.
Laura, you had your hand up, and
Yep.
Tim, I see your hand up. So Laura first.
So the reason I would like to have this go to bid and get an accurate figure on the cost of this, and just make sure that we're doing our due diligence. The worst thing that I think we could do is approve this really top of the line $540,000 project. It comes in at 300, and we're patting ourselves on the back because we saved so much money, but the taxpayers, we can't give that money back to them. It's going to go into free cash. It's going to be spent on something else, and it's not responsible. And if it does come back and it is going to cost $540,000, we can go back to the town and said, we did our best. We tried to figure out ways to save money. This is the best we could come back at. But right now, I don't feel like we've done our due diligence for them. And with everything else that we're facing, I really would prefer not to rush through this. And again, I'm not opposed to the project. I want to support it. I just want to make sure that we're doing it in the most responsible way. So.
Tim?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Okay. If I may, Mr. Chair, you had asked a question about what they call in a bid spec an add alt. So it's an add alternate using a lower grade material than what Scott had told us before. So I just wanted Scott to walk us through that scenario. He wasn't on the call at the time. So Scott, can you talk about that in terms of that process for an add alternate?
Certainly. So you put a base bid together. The idea is you can do it in 2 directions. We did it at the town common. Base bid included the memorial you see that was constructed, and with the rectangular benches. We had a bid alternate with curved benches. The curved benches were far too expensive and exceeded the budget, so that alternate was not exercised. So the award was based on what you see today. You can do the same thing with an exterior improvement project such as this. You could do the base bid as, top grade, best vinyl you can buy, and bid alternate is, a residential version. You could do a base bid where the entire building is wrapped with cement board. Somebody referred to it as hardy board earlier, and then have a bid alternate with vinyl siding. That's perfectly fine and legal, and we do it all the time. We're doing it with the dog park. We have bid alternates. In contrast, we had it on the senior center trail. So that's all part of the bidding process. And once you get an architect engaged, you have an opportunity to get a more detailed cost estimate and come up with the different options that are being discussed here. Is it pine clapboard and vinyl siding? What are those costs? Get a detailed cost estimate and decide which direction we go out for bid.
Julianne.
Okay, so the question that would arise from what you just said, Scott, is okay, so these different bids come in, who makes the decision on which way to go?
If it's one of the roadway projects or a parks project that I'm bidding,
If it's the police station.
If it's the police station, I would think the police chief and the finance director. Yes, well, it's a police chief's, building him and his staff, reside in, and Jason's the finance director. The three of us would get together and determine what's the best mechanism of award. And
there's no input from the select board.
If the select board wants to pick what bid to award, I'm implementing things. If this board chooses to do, purple windows and flags on the roof, you want me to do that? I'll put it on the street, I'll bid it, I'll make a recommendation, and you choose. I got no problem with that.
Yeah,
I will get it done with how you want it done.
I think what we're concerned about is final cost, and if there's option A versus option B, the $100,000 difference, that's a big decision, right? Because you're deciding maybe longevity versus a lot of money. So I was just curious who makes that decision in the end.
The awarding authority, and if the awarding authority is the board wants to weigh in on it and make that decision, that's fine. I mean, I can have an architect come up with three estimates, 3 different materials. This board can decide what you want bid, and then when the bids come in, you can choose what you award. I'm happy to do that.
Is there something in our bylaws or charter that? Oh, maybe Jason knows the answer.
Oh, my only input into this is that generally the town meeting articles will specify what department the money is appropriated to, and department heads have the authority to make decisions on behalf of their budgets and their buildings that are under their control. So typically my view is, and I'm going to put my accountant hat on for a second, is my job is to make sure all of the decisions got made with respect to who has authority over each appropriation. So there typically isn't an outside or another party involved with a department's decisions for how they spend money in an article. That's the only thing that I wanted to add.
Okay.
Tim.
Yeah, just recalling the charter and the responsibilities of the town administrator to make sure buildings are maintained. I mean, whether it's my authority or the board's, we want to get it done. And we want to get it done in the way and manner that the board supports. So, there isn't a mechanism that says, hey, contracts over this amount have to be ratified by the board. But for a project this, important and seemingly contentious, I would want the board to know that, we bid out 3 different alternates and they came back with these 3 different numbers, and the board would then choose to award. But generally speaking, if it was just a smaller project, be allocated, like Jason said, to the department to have discretion over that. But, if it's a difference of a swing of $50,000 or even $200,000, I still think we're going to have a conversation with the board before we, enter into that agreement with that contractor.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we have the authority to get involved in this at that level of detail if we felt it was necessary. One way of doing with that would be at our next meeting, we will review articles that we want to specifically recommend, and we could, for example, have a vote to recommend article, whatever this number is, contingent upon the board having final authority over reviewing bid specs and choosing the alternate, or say whatever language we wanted to come up with. And I'm sure Tim could come up with something on that regard, and that would make it clear by vote that we wanted this to come back to us for final approval before there's any money spent on construction.
And would that make people feel a little better about moving forward with this?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, that sounds like, using Laura's words, because I appreciate what she's saying, the most responsible way forward, the most responsible way to use the taxpayers' money, whatever. I feel like that's a very responsible way to go about this, is to, I mean, I hope people don't see it as micromanaging, and I won't be here to be part of it, but which is probably just as well. This is not necessarily what I would consider myself great at, but if it's a question of responsibility, right? And like Tim said, like this particular project does seem to be contentious for some members of the board, and a little bit of a bigger deal than certainly many other projects that department heads deal with. And Chief Griffin is a nice guy and is very amenable to probably working with the board on, making big decisions like this. I feel like that's a good level of responsibility. And we're also right now just deciding that it goes on the warrant, right?
Correct.
So this is not a done deal. If we say yes tonight, it still has to pass the voters, right?
So we've already closed the warrant. So this is basically on there.
Right.
I think if a majority of us didn't want to do this,
Yeah.
the appropriate action, I think, would be that we would make a motion that the board does not support this article.
Oh.
That we recommend defeat of the article at town meeting. I think it is, for just some practical reasons, challenging, if not impossible, to actually remove it at this stage. We could have done that earlier when we had agenda items to, open the warrant and so forth.
No, I see Diane and Tim glaring at me like, don't even suggest that. No, I'm like kidding. I'm kidding. Di never glares. But anyway, okay, thanks for explaining that, Mitch. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, any other comments or questions? All right. All right, with that, anybody have anything else on the warrant that we wanted to talk about before we entertain a motion to approve and execute the warrant? Laura?
I just had a quick question, and I think I know the answer. There was a section in the warrant where it's crossing out the district nurse. Is that going to move under the Health and Human Services article?
Yes, for the Board of Health, that right now currently funded by a grant anyways, but yeah, there would be, you still have the nurse intact to a contract.
And, I just lost my train of thought on that. So we're not getting rid of it. What if this new department doesn't pass? Do all of these other articles, like the youth services, nurse, all of these other groups of the charter that we're striking, do they come back, or what will happen if? Status quo will be just as it is today. So whatever we have in place today will be in place on the 23rd of April. Okay. And the last question, I saw there was a note about a town undertaker. Who is our town undertaker?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I saw that too, and I think there's supposed to be a designee. But I think it might just be older language,
Okay,
but I don't know who it is if we have one designated.
thank you for clarifying all of that. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura. Any other comments or questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve and execute the April 22nd, 2024 town meeting warrant? Or Laura, I'm seeing you
I
think.
had a question. So do
Okay.
we need to take a vote on the fire station now, or what will happen with, I mean, the police station job?
At our next meeting,
Okay,
we will go through the warrant and decide what articles we wanted to specifically
Okay.
have recommendations on.
okay,
And at that point, we could make a recommendation one way or another on that article.
thank you for clarifying.
Sure. Okay, is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to approve and execute the April 22nd, 2024 town meeting warrant.
Second,
Okay, motion made by Kristen, seconded by Laura. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Kristen,
Aye.
Laura,
aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Julianne.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. We have a town meeting warrant. Excellent. I assume you would like us to come into town hall in the very near future to sign some documents?
Please.
Yes, please.
Excellent. Next up, we have discussion regarding the use of Code Red and advertising strategies for town meeting. Tim.
Are the chiefs coming in?
Yeah, you want me to bring, who would you like me to bring in? Oh, I see Chief Griffin. Would you bring in Fire Chief Parenti? Tim or Di?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think
Yeah,
I think it's appropriate.
okay. And want me to bring in Town Clerk also?
Yes.
if he's available, sure.
Okay. Andy, I've decided you're available. Excellent. So I know that both chiefs supplied some feedback on Code Red. Question came up at our last meeting as to whether we could use it for non-emergency uses. And they both provided some details on that. So I don't know if either of you want to take it away, or Tim, you want to lead the discussion?
The Code Red piece, I mean, it was made clear even during my interview process from the former chief that, you know, Code Red was to be used for emergencies, and that's what people signed up for. And we know the memos from the chiefs talking about its use is kind of paralleling that track. People just get overloaded with information, I think. My recommendation is to not use it, and let's focus on the social media outlets that we have, local cable. I told you about the show we're doing, and try to, you know, get people to at least understand the warrant, understand the articles, and then encourage them to call ahead and obviously attend town meeting. The DPW sign wherever we can put that, where it normally goes a week or two before town meeting. And, you know, I don't know what you can do to, other than those 4 items to attract and get people in the door.
I will say, Julianne.
So, I understand what you're saying, Tim, that when people signed up for this, they only wanted to be alerted to emergencies. Maybe in the coming months, we have to look at another mechanism where we can do robocalls for this kind of information, because a lot of towns do it. And I think last year, or the year before, Diane, maybe you can help me out with this. Did the superintendent send out something through the schools about town meeting? because the schools do a really good job with communicating. And I think we asked Superintendent Martineau, Andy, your hand is up. Do you have an
Yeah.
answer to my question?
Andy?
Yeah, through the chair, if I could, that is on my list of items that are typically done, and we'll reiterate that request to the superintendent this year. In addition to that, the recreation department typically sends out an email blast. They have a very large listserv. Tim covered most of the other methods that we typically utilize. We also have the lawn signs that were acquired last year that will be placed out that have the QR code on them. And that points to the main town meeting page, which is still valid. And I think we've done a good job of increasing our social media presence and probably more importantly, making sure it gets shared amongst their variety of departments that have a page, and we're doing better at coordinating things like that. So I think all those things will help get the word out.
Andy, how many lawn signs do you have?
I believe we have 15 of those, so we have plenty.
I could take one. I'm on Bartlett Street. I would be happy to. I have a lot of visibility.
Less visibility, but excited for it.
Yeah. Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
Mitch? So in the packet, I'm not dreaming this, right? In the packet, there was a letter from each of the chiefs, right? Okay. I remember, because I didn't read it like yesterday. Maybe I read it over the weekend. But I thought their suggestions made a lot of sense, where it was like, it should be just emergencies. It shouldn't be for things like Apple Fest and the summer concert series. Absolutely not, because that would be, sort of something people start to ignore. But I think adding the two big things a year, the town meeting and elections, are, I don't know. I thought that was a nice, happy medium. Like they both recommended basically the same thing of using it for just these. Because okay, they're not emergencies, but you know what? Like people shouldn't ignore them. And it's ridiculous for our town meeting so frequently to have just barely 100 people at it. Like I get it that cable TV is a good way to get through to lots of people, but also lots of people like myself don't have cable TV anymore. And there's a rule in some types of marketing that people have to see something, what is it, like 5 times or 7 times or something before they really register it. So if you get the email from the rec department and you get the email from the school and you get the email from like the town, you can sign up for emails from the town, right? And then you see somebody's lawn sign, and then you also get a text like a couple days before, just being like, oh, right, yeah, I got to put that on my calendar. Like, I don't know. I thought the Chiefs had a really good happy medium where it was like just for these really important things. No, they're not emergencies, but they are really, really important to the government of the town.
Sorry, Chief Brandy.
I just want to add a little information that may help clear things up. Just because, I did some research and to look and see how many people were signed up for emergency calls and how many people were signed up for general announcements. And there's over 12,000 people signed up for both. Interestingly enough, the majority of them are signed up only for phone calls. They're not signed up for text or emails. Very small amount are signed up for text or email. And when you send those phone calls out, the stats I looked at, a good 6,000 to 7,000 aren't answered or are just kind of die. Now, if someone has depending on how they have it set up, it could go to their voicemail. Maybe it doesn't go to their voicemail. So it's something that if this board decided they wanted to do it, we could implement it. I completely agree that we don't want, and Chief Griffin and I talked about this, we don't want Apple Fest. We don't want all these other things going out. But I think a simple, if you want to do something for town meeting, is something I can make happen if you want to. But I think you need to realize it's a very small sector of people that will be getting it, because depending on what time you send it out, depends on whether they answer their phone or don't answer their phone or go to voicemail. There's a lot of things to do.
Thank you, Chief. Just quickly, what I wanted to mention was that I had asked the chief for those numbers, and he was nice enough to send them along. So I'll because I'm a numbers guy, I will read a couple of them. We have 12,743 contacts signed up for the emergency list, and about 225 less of that 12,518 signed up for the general list. And I've been signed up for Code Red for a long time, but I went through the process to see what it looked like. And when you sign up, you have to say yes to the emergency. You can't opt out of that because that's the reason for it existing, but you can opt out of the general list. So about 225 people have decided they don't want that. We haven't used that general list very much, but it's certainly available to us. And I think, those people signed, they may not remember it, but they certainly signed up with that expectation that they would get things that were not emergency. And if they didn't want anything that was not emergency, they could do that. And essentially all of them sign up for phone, roughly 20 for TDD, for hard of hearing people, 1,929 for email, and 2,290 for text messages, and that's for emergency, and it's just a little bit less on each of those categories for the non-emergency. From my perspective, I'm comfortable using the general list. I think we have to be cautious about not overusing it. This would be, I think, the first general one that we've probably used in at least a long time if we do this. So you might get a few people say, oh my God, why are you calling me about town meeting? Because I don't care about town meeting. And my response, you should care about town meeting. It's important. But I think it is worth going down that road. I think communications is something that we could and should be doing a lot more about. This is just one little piece, one little thing I think we could do. But that's my input onto it. And we've got lots of hands up now. Lisa, and then Chief Parenti, and then Kristen.
I agree with you on that. I think that that I'd spoken to a few seniors during our Make Kindness Week. And 2 or 3 of the seniors had come forward and said, we don't do email. We would like a phone call. A lot of things go by, we don't even know that they happen. I get the answer, it goes right to my answer machine. So whether or not I pick up the phone or I listen to my message, it does come on the message. Well, I don't get it from here. I get it from North Brookfield for whatever reason. And so I for trying it even as an experiment, a pilot program for this time. We're not looking to do everything that's going on, but we're looking to do getting more than 300 people to town meeting. And especially with the amount of money and the cost that is going to escalate, I think that people need to understand the importance of them coming. I think that added to the lawn signs, which could go in, places that are municipal or those of us who have areas where people frequent, is a great idea. We need to do more because clearly we're not doing enough. 15,000 people, we get 300. I mean, we've got to do better. And I think that it is an option. And I know I hear it all the time from North Brookfield, and I'm kind of, they don't go crazy, but it's kind of interesting to hear that there are people, different towns that are using this and doing it successfully. And I agree with Mitch. I think that let's try it. One meeting for the whole year can't be that much of a burden. It's not a financial burden because we did check that out. And that number that you say, and that Chief Parenti has said, clearly indicates that there are people that do want to get that kind of a message, or a message other than just an emergency. So that's my take on that.
Thanks, Elisa. Chief Parenti?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and members of the board, I just wanted to give you a little information the last several times Code Red was used, so people have an idea. The last time it was used was for Mount Pisgah, and I did that about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and that was done via a geographical area. So what you can do is you draw a circle, and anyone's in that area, whether they've signed up for our information or they're from wherever, are going to get that notification. You don't have. I drew a circle around the whole town, and you were driving through our town, and you had the app, and the app was turned on to give me any notifications. You would get that notification. Last 3 times it was used for general notifications. 2 of them were related to COVID. One was a town meeting cancellation, and the other one was just some general COVID information. The other time was when 911 was down and out to everyone. That's the last 3 times. They were done in 2021. There hasn't been a general notification sent out since. Just to give you a little idea how often we use it.
Thank you. Kristen.
So, I had dinner with my 18-year-old son tonight, and he suggested that I ask how do people know if people are worried, because this is right where his mind goes, who's hacking into this, right? So he said, do these guys have launch codes? What are we dealing with here? And maybe some people aren't signing up for it because maybe they're concerned that some high school kid is going to get a hold of it and start sending wacky messages to their phone. So I did tell him that I read in this letter that there's 4 people who are in charge of it: the police chief, the fire chief, DPW chief, and the town administrator. And do I have it right that all 4 of you have to okay the message before it goes out, or just one of you? I can't remember.
So normally it's kind of time of day dependent and incident dependent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if it's something we can discuss, yeah, we're all going to discuss it, make sure that we agree with it. And somebody else, and I just want to mention this, I think Lisa had mentioned about the seniors wanting to get phone calls. Really critical. I learned a really hard lesson in a previous department. Do not use the computer generated voice for the phone calls because the seniors can't understand it. Horrible way to do it. So you actually have to draw up a script and pick who's going to do the message. And it's super, super critical. It's all done important, but that it's all done properly. But it's something like that we would all talk about. If it's a 911 thing and the police chief needs to send it out, he can send it out. I can send it out. Town administrator probably can't send it out, but communication department can send it out, but they have to have our permission. They can't do it without us. Scott, the Charpentier, and my deputy chief. The answer to your question, it's not that easy to do. We all have our individual login. And in order to launch it, you are right. There is a thing called a launch code that we have to have. So we can draft it all we want, but if I don't have my launch code, I can't launch that message out. So there are several layers. I've done it. I don't know if Chief Griffin, have you ever sent any out?
Not yet, but I've been around when it has gone out. So I've sat right next to the person who did it.
Yeah. I mean, the way I would do something like this, say if you chose to do this, I would recommend either the town administrator or the chair of the board would be the phone call voice. We would draft something up, and then they would actually receive an email, or not a email, they receive a phone call and say, okay, this is your phone call to record your message, and you would record the message. And then after that's recorded, we would take whatever that script is, we would then convert that script into the TDD, into the text, into the email, and into, is there one other thing? No, that's the 3 things we'd have to do. And then it would all be launched at the same time.
It's actually a lot of work that goes into it.
It is not
explained easy. And I think we're all afraid that we're going to screw something up when we do it and, send the wrong message out. And so usually we bring in somebody else to be with us. It is a delicate process. But I will also, and you've read my memo, the chief and I talked about, And I do agree with the seniors. I did have some conversation with them when I was talking about my new senior liaison officers, and they hadn't heard of it because they don't have Facebook, and that's how we do a lot of our messages, and that reaches a lot of people. It really does, but it's not reaching everyone. So I'm okay, as you saw in my memo, with I think we try it out for the town meeting and for the elections. I really would just kind of like to leave it at that at this time and see how it goes, just to so people are not tuning us out. That's for that emergency.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you have launch codes.
Thank you. Tim, you had your electronic hand up a little while ago. You lowered it, but
No, I'm all set. I was trying to find out from Kendra how many seniors she had on her robo list. But I don't think that I was worried that, Lisa, if you were talking to folks that were at the senior center or just a general senior that doesn't have any contact with the senior centers, we can reach those folks as well. I guess that's the message.
Right. Well, it was both. It was two. I mean, I was at two different places, one being the senior center and one being in town. And they're a specific group, and they're the voting group, actually. I think you usually get quite a few seniors that come, and they come regularly, and they take a lot of time to understand what's going on. And I think, anything we can do to make their lives a little easier for them, I think we should. So.
I think I'm seeing consensus on the board to use the Code Red general list for town meeting. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
I'm seeing a lot of nodding. Okay. All right. So I think that's what we'll do. And I will trust the powers that be to figure out the mechanics of making that happen. Chief Griffin?
Was just going to say, if we were to do that, or when we do that, when do you think we should send it out? Is it the day before town meeting, or that would be a Sunday? So Friday
before.
The Friday before.
That's what I'm thinking out loud. Sorry.
I think you should do it twice. You should do it a week before. I mean, people have to know what's going to happen. If you do it on Friday night and it's happening on Monday.
Yeah, I'm reluctant to, I think that starts to get into the overuse of it. Maybe after we've been doing that for a while, maybe take a look at it. Andy, when do you send out your emails in advance of town meeting?
Now that the warrant has been executed, and once that's available, we'll start pushing information out this week. There's already a notice at the top of the town news section, as well as on my page, the town meeting page. And I know Tim's got his new town administrator corner, which has a lot of good information on it that'll be added to. So we'll start doing that this week.
Lots of hands up. Chief, did you have anything else that you wanted to add there? Okay. Lisa, you had your hand up, and then I saw a couple others after that.
I'm putting myself in a placeholder to be able to ask about having our trial for at the senior center.
Okay.
So you can put me to the side when it's ready.
Okay. Laura, I know I saw your hand up, and I may have seen somebody else's hand after that. So Laura.
Thank you. My only thought is I think we should do the text message the same way, with the same notifications that we do our meetings. So if our meeting's going to be on Monday, then the alert, if we want to do it like rather than a Friday, we'd want to do it 2 days before, similar to our regular OML, just to kind of follow that process, or sooner. But that at the minimum, I would like to give people that same 2-day notification. But otherwise, I'm excited about doing this, and I thank you for all the feedback on it.
So Laura, are you okay then with the Friday before the Monday town meeting as being a day to send it out? Or do you think you want it sooner than that?
Do we usually put the announcement on Thursday for our meeting and then packets on Friday?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the posting would need to be Thursday. I'm fine with the Thursday before. Tim, does that work for you?
That's fine.
Okay. All right. I saw another hand up before. Julianne, I didn't remember where it was because everyone's bouncing around tonight. I don't know why that is.
So I want to go back to what Kristen said about people need to be reminded in different ways frequently. And I think that we should leave it up to the chiefs to discuss when the superintendent is going to send out his email, if he's going to, and Andy to see when he's going to send out his information. And it should be staggered in a way that people receive the information in a timely way.
I think that's a good idea. That's some coordination that I would leave that up to staff to attempt to do.
Coordination, that's the word I should have used.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions on the code red part? Is everyone okay with the Thursday before the Monday town meeting for this going out? And thinking ahead to the election, do we want to also say the Thursday before the Tuesday election? Just to get that into the calendar. So we just say we do it Thursdays.
That works for me.
Okay. All right. So we've got those two on the books. Again, I will leave it to the Andy.
I was just going to suggest for the election where early voting will start the Monday before, it may make sense to do the notice and incorporate that into it, but we can certainly discuss that amongst staff going forward. But getting the notice out will be helpful.
Just yeah, I sometime before the election, maybe come back with a recommendation on when to do that. That's good information. Any other comments or questions on the code red? All right, so for town meeting, we're going to do a code red to the general list on the Thursday before a town meeting. Everything else is left up to others. And Lisa, did you have something on your mind about the senior center?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Andy, for being here. And your tan looks lovely. So we had talked while you were on vacation about having a type of a mock town meeting at Senior Center. A couple of seniors had approached me about it because even giving them a little bit of a going back onto the internet and getting information is not as easier for them as it is if we could have like a time set aside. I did talk to Kendra, which we'd have to work out with her, but that we would have this meeting so that people could ask questions if they wanted to ask questions, just to go through it, and also to experience the electronic voting so that they have some sense of comfort with that before town meeting. And I think Mitch had said that he wanted to leave that up to, was it staff? Was it Fred and Andy, or what did you say when we discussed that before? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly, but I think it's a good idea to, if we get the equipment in enough time, to do a little run through at the senior center. I think that's a good place for that. Andy, what's the status on the equipment?
I don't have a delivery date yet. I actually reiterated that request to the vendor today, so I should have a firm date, I would hope, by tomorrow, the next day. We do have a test kit currently in our possession, so that could be utilized for a potential demo. I had some conversation with Fred George, the moderator, about the proposed mock town meeting, or whatever you wish to call it, at the senior center, and he indicated he'd be willing to participate. I'm sure we can figure out something that would work, that would benefit those folks, to give them an idea of both what's on the warrant and also how the town meeting electronic voting devices will work. So we're starting to put some information out to the public this week on those as well. And we'll try to make people aware ahead of time on how that's all going to happen. There'll be a video done by cable as well this week. We'll explain that process. So that's in the works.
Excellent.
And how much time do we have before the meeting now? Do we have like 4 weeks, 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
3 weeks from today.
3 weeks from today. So we could, at the latest, I guess 1 week, we could do it by 1 week from the meeting. At least I guess we'd have to notify them. We'd have to work with Kendra deciding on what day was available. somebody had mentioned Tuesday night where they have a Tuesday night open, but I don't even remember who mentioned that to me. But something that would, set aside a couple of hours. Because you got to get people there and then you have to do what you need to. And
Daytime, they're most busy. That's when that place is hopping. So that would be my thought. But again, my preference is to leave it to Andy and Fred as the people that run town meeting to figure out the timing. And I know Andy speaks, I'm sure, with Kendra frequently about a number of things, and getting the time sorted out is the easy part.
yeah, because she's ultimately the person making that choice. So
yeah.
I happened to be speaking with Kendra today about a couple other things, and she mentioned that they've had 110 people consistently for lunch each day. So it's been super busy. So maybe something right after lunch would make sense to try to get the best attendance possible. So we can certainly work on that.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Tim.
Yeah, Kendra, actually some staff here. I think, Lisa, you started the conversation with Kendra, and then Kendra was talking to internal folks at the senior center, and they were interested in learning more about the family youth services and Board of Health merger. So on the 17th, we plan on having a meeting there on the 17th at 10 a.m. And I don't know if it could be on the same day, but they wanted myself and some other staff to come in and talk about those particular warrant articles, 37 and 38 in the warrant. So I know you had a different goal in mind, but you started it and then someone took a right-hand turn, and that's what's on the books in terms of meeting with anybody who was at the senior center on the 17th at 10 a.m.
Okay, but this would be a different meeting then, right?
It would, but if you're going to have an attentive audience there that's already intimated they want to learn more about two articles, you might want to find a way to merge it onto that date. But I'll be there either way.
Okay. Yeah, this is it. I'm leaving it in staff's capable hands because I'm just the messenger. So.
Okay. Anybody else have any other comments or questions on that idea? Okay. Just anything else related to advertising strategies for town meeting?
When do I get my yard sign?
We may need to get more if we all want them.
Yeah, especially those of us with a high traffic area.
Yeah. Yeah, my from what I remember from prior years is you've got enough signs to cover municipal properties around town, not too many residential properties. But maybe that's something that we can fund for future years, is getting a few more signs.
I think it should be required. If you're on the select board, you have to have a sign.
A great idea.
I like it.
Yeah, just to reiterate, to Mitch's point, that's what was done last year, is basically municipal facilities, public parks, that sort of thing, were highly visible locations. That's where they're a place we did realize last year that the wind conditions in the spring proved to be a challenge for the sign. So we'll try to time it well, and DPW did a good job reinforcing some of them so they didn't blow away, but we'll get them out there and make it work.
Okay. The White Cliffs is included in that, right? The White Cliffs is included in that for lawns?
Certainly could be. It's town owned.
Town owned and right out there on 20.
That it is.
Okay. All right. I don't think we have anything else on town meeting advertising. I think it was a good discussion. Did a couple of good things. We don't have a final public comments item, but since we started with public comments, we'll end with public comments. Is there anyone in our audience that wishes to comment on anything before we close out? Seeing none, public comments is closed. And this being not a regular meeting, there are no reports this evening. Our next meeting, which is a week from tonight, will be our first hybrid meeting. I've been told that it's not a might anymore. It's a we will do it. So I'm looking forward to that. We will have all three of our legislators there in person for our meeting with them, as well as anything and everything else. If there is nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
There's
Julianne.
something else.
Sure.
So today we got a gentle reminder about ARPA deadline coming up fairly soon. And I was wondering if we should have a discussion about setting a meeting time to have a real working session on how to move forward with allocating those funds. We have a pretty busy schedule, but my preference would be to have a designated meeting only to that, so that we can really hash these ideas out. And we probably don't have time before town meeting. So the calendar will be coming out soon for May, June, in the summer. Can we add a special meeting onto that calendar for that purpose?
Yeah, at our next meeting, we will be talking about the next few months worth of meetings, and yeah, we can make a discussion on that.
Excellent, thank you.
I think that's a good idea. I'll put you on the spot, Julianne. Have you completed the list of all the public input items that you were working on a while back?
Well, I have the whole list. I don't know how nicely you want me to package it,
Okay.
but it will be ready whenever you tell me to have it ready.
Okay. Sounds great. Okay, there being nothing else, assuming there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Laura, seconded by Julianne to adjourn. All those in favor, Laura?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Kristen?
Loki and I vote aye.
Thank Loki for joining us this evening.
You're so nice.
I
did feed him dinner, I swear.
I also vote aye. The vote is unanimous in favor. We are adjourned 9:18 p.m. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye, everybody.